Oh! Punk's Corner with John Weasley. Weasley, I mean.
Hello, everybody. No, you were not first, Nicole. Zeynep was first today. Okay, first of all, I got a lot going on today. This, actually, I forgot I had this. This hangs in my bathroom as decoration in my where my toilet is. And this, I ordered about, I don't know, half a year ago or a year ago. It's a full-on ramen tracksuit. All right, let's turn this garbage off. It's not garbage, it's actually pretty good. Hey everybody, welcome to Conk's Corner with John Reedsley. And Mark, who's over there, if you want to pop your head, and you can. He's been helping me out with some of the characters and things I forget. And also, you have only read the first 4 books. You haven't read the last 3.
Yeah, correct.
But he's seen all the movies as well, so he knows how the story goes and everything. Yeah. This is Dexter, my dog, and basically I'm reading Harry Potter every single day for an hour for you to take your mind off things and for me to be able to connect with people who aren't in just this room. To be able to get out in the world. Hi, Mary!
Are you saying I'm not good enough for you, John?
Yeah, Mark, I'm so sorry. We're breaking up. Okay, I've never read the books. I've only seen 2 or 3 of the movies a lot of time ago. I don't remember anything from them. I read all the comments you write down afterwards. So please, no spoilers, no hints. I'm doing a new thing where I'm going to ask some questions in between certain scenes and chapters. They're not necessarily Harry Potter related, but it's just fun for me to interact with you and hear who's joining in and who's on the other side. I save all these on YouTube, so if you've missed anything, you can catch up. Go to the link in my bio. You can find out what has happened, some of the inside jokes, like Conk's Corner. The reason it's called Conk's Corner is because Peeves, the ghost, at one point screams, "Got your conch!" Which is the weirdest thing to yell at children. It's the weirdest thing. Don't forget to clap for your nurses, encourage your nurses, ask them how they're doing, if they need anything. I know Alana and other nurses are tuning in. Thank you so much for what you do. You do everything that we can't while we're just sitting in our butts here. So thank you so much. Okay, so we are now, where are we in this? Oh right, they just had the magic duel between Harry and Draco, and Draco spat out he spat out a nurse out of his wand. Not a nurse. He didn't spit out.
Shake on top of chop.
Yeah. Stay inside. He spat out a snake out of his wand, and Harry did something by looking at the snake. He just looked at it and said, "Stop it!" And the snake listened to him. It freaked everybody out. And then Ron and Hermione said, "Let's get out of here." And that's where we ended last time. So, and I'm gonna try a new thing. I'm gonna try put on some different music if we're in more intense scenes. I don't know if that'll work out or not, but I'm gonna give it a shot. Okay. "Come on," said Ron's voice in his ear. "Move, come on." Ron steered him out of the hall. Hermione hurried alongside them. As they went through the doors, the people on either side drew away, as though they were frightened of catching something. Harry didn't have a clue what was going on, and neither Ron nor Hermione explained anything until they had dragged him all the way up to the empty Gryffindor common room. Then Ron pushed Harry into an armchair and said, "You're a parcel mouth. Why didn't you tell us?" I'm a what?" said Harry. "A parcel mouth," said Ron. "You can talk to snakes." "I know," said Harry. "I mean, that's only the second time I've ever done it. I accidentally set a boa constrictor on my cousin Dudley at the zoo once. Long story. But it was telling me it had never seen Brazil, and I sort of set it free without meaning to. That was before I knew I was a wizard." "A boa constrictor told you it had never seen Brazil?" Ron repeated faintly. So? Said Harry. I bet loads of people here can do it. Oh, no, they can't, said Ron. It's not a very common gift. Harry, this is bad. What's bad? Said Harry, starting to feel quite angry. What's wrong with everyone? Listen, if I hadn't told that snake not to attack Justin... Oh, that's what you said to it. What do you mean? You were there. You heard me. I heard you speaking parcel tongue, said Ron. Snake language. You could have been saying anything. No wonder Justin panicked. You sounded like you were egging the snake on or something. It was creepy, you know? Harry gaped at him. I spoke a different language, but I didn't realize. How can I speak a language without knowing I can speak it? Ron shook his head. Both he and Hermione were looking as though someone had died. Harry couldn't see what was so terrible. Do you want to tell me what's wrong with stopping a dirty great snake biting Justin's head off? He said. What does it matter how I did it, as long as Justin doesn't have to join the headless hunt? It matters, said Hermione, speaking at last in a hushed voice, because being able to talk to snakes was what Salazar Slytherin was famous for. That's what the symbol of Slytherin House is, a serpent. That's why. Harry's mouth fell open. Exactly, said Ron. And now the whole school's going to think you're his great-great-great-great-great-grandson or something. But I'm not, said Harry, with a panic he couldn't quite explain. You'll find that hard to prove, said Hermione. He lived about 1,000 years ago. For all we know, you could be. Yikes. So he might be related to snake speaker Salazar. John, do you find tickling A, silly, B, annoying, C, sensual, C, so sensual? Harry lay awake for hours that night. Through a gap in the hangings around his four-poster, he watched snow starting to drift past the tower window and wondered, could he be a descendant of Salazar Slytherin? He didn't know anything about his father's family, after all. The Dursleys had always forbidden questions about his wizarding relatives. Quietly, Harry tried to say something in parcel tongue. The words wouldn't come. It seemed he had to be face to face with a snake to do it. But I'm in Gryffindor, Harry thought. The Sorting Hat wouldn't have put me here if I had Slytherin blood. Said a nasty little voice in his brain. But the Sorting Hat wanted to put you in Slytherin. Don't you remember? Harry turned over. It doesn't even, go into that at all. That there's a nasty little voice in his brain. Or I guess maybe that's the inside voice we all have. He'd see Justin next day in herbology, and he'd explain that he'd been calling the snake off, not egging it on. Which, he thought angrily, pummeling his pillow, any fool should have realized. By next morning, however, the snow that had begun in the night had turned into a blizzard so thick that the last herbology lesson of term was cancelled. Professor Sprout wanted to fit socks and scarves on the mandrakes, those freaky little dirt babies. A tricky operation she would entrust to no one else, now that it was so important for the mandrakes to grow quickly and revive Mrs. Norris and Colin Creevey. Harry fretted about this next to the fire in the Gryffindor common room, while Ron and Hermione used their lesson off to play a game of wizard chess. For heaven's sake, Harry, said Hermione, exasperated, as one of Ron's bishops wrestled her knight off his horse and dragged him off the board. Go and find Justin if it's so important to you. So Harry got up and left through the portrait hole, wondering where Justin might be. The castle was darker than it usually was in daytime, because of the thick, swirling grey snow at every window. Shivering, Harry walked past classrooms where lessons were taking place, catching snatches of what was happening within. Professor McGonagall was shouting at someone who, by the sound of it, had turned his friend into a badger. There are no rules and no regulations at this school. Well, there are rules, but no regulations. Resisting the urge to take a look, Harry walked on by, thinking that Justin might be using his free lesson to catch up on some work, and deciding to check the library first. A group of the Hufflepuffs, who should be in herbology, were indeed sitting at the back of the library, but they didn't seem to be working. Between the long lines of high bookshelves, Harry could see their heads were close together, and they were having what looked like an absorbing conversation. He couldn't see where Justin was among them. He was walking towards them when something of what they were saying met his ears, and he paused to listen, hidden in the invisibility section.
So anyway, a stout boy was saying, I told Justin to hide up in our dormitory. I meant to say, if Potter's marked him down as his next victim, it's best if he keeps a low profile for a while. Of course, Justin's been waiting for something like this to happen ever since he let slip to Potter he was Muggle-born. Justin actually told him he'd been down for Eton. That's not the kind of thing you bandy about with Slytherin's heir on the loose, is it? You definitely think it is Potter, then, Ernie? Said a girl with blonde pigtails anxiously. Hannah, said the stout boy solemnly. He's a parcel mouth. Everyone knows that's the mark of a dark wizard. Have you ever heard of a decent one who could talk to snakes? They called Slytherin himself Serpent Tongue. There was some heavy murmuring at this, and Ernie went on. Remember what was written on the wall? Enemies of the heir beware. Potter had some sort of... So is Ernie a main character? No, okay. Enemies of the heir beware. Potter had some sort of run-in with Filch. Next thing we know, Filch's cats attacked. That first year, Creevy was annoying Potter at the Quidditch match, taking pictures of him while he was lying in the mud. Next thing we know, Creevy's been attacked. He's always so nice, though, said Hannah uncertainly. And, well, he's the one who made you-know-who disappear. He can't be all that bad, can he? Ernie lowered his voice mysteriously, and Hufflepuff's bent closer, and Harry edged nearer so that he could catch Ernie's words. No one knows he survived that attack by you-know-who. I mean to say, he was only a baby when it happened. He should have been blasted into smithereens. Only a really powerful dark wizard could have survived a curse like that. He dropped his voice until it was barely more than a whisper and said, That's probably why you-know-who wanted to kill him in the first place. Didn't want another Dark Lord competing with him. I wonder what other powers Potter's been hiding. Harry couldn't take any more. Clearing his throat loudly, he stepped out from behind the bookshelves. Ooh, big move, Harry. I'm over here!
Okay. He stepped out from behind the bookshelves. If he hadn't been feeling so angry, he would have found the sight that greeted him funny. Every one of the Hufflepuffs looked as though they had been petrified by the sight of him, and the colour was draining out of Ernie's face. Hello, said Harry. I'm looking for Justin Finch-Fletchley. The Hufflepuff's worst fears had clearly been confirmed. They all looked fearfully at Ernie. What do you want to tell him? Said Ernie in a quavering voice. I wanted to tell him what really happened with that snake at the dueling club, said Harry. Oh. Rona! Ernie bit his white lips and then, taking a deep breath, said, We were all there. We saw what happened. Then you noticed that after I spoke to it, the snake backed off? Said Harry. All I saw, said Ernie stubbornly, though he was trembling as he spoke, was you speaking parcel tongue and chasing the snake towards Justin. I didn't chase him, Harry said, his voice shaking with anger. It didn't even touch him. It was a very near miss, said Ernie, and in case you're getting any ideas, he said hastily, I might tell you that you can trace my family back through 9 generations of witches and warlocks, and my blood's as pure as anyone's, so I don't care what sort of blood you've got, said Harry fiercely. Why would I want to attack Muggle-borns? I've heard you hate those Muggles you live with, said Ernie swiftly. It's not possible to live with the Dursleys and not hate them, said Harry. I'd like to see you try it. He turned on his heels and stormed out of the library, earning himself a reproving glare from Madame Pince, who was polishing the gilded cover of a large spellbook. Harry blundered up the corridor, barely noticing where he was going. He was in such a fury. The result was that he'd walked into something very large and solid, which knocked him backwards onto the floor. It was a wall. No, it wasn't. Oh, Hello, Hagrid. Yes! Sorry, I love Hagrid so much. Harry said, looking up. Hagrid's face was entirely hidden by a woolly, snow-covered balaclava, but it couldn't possibly be anyone else, as he filled most of the corridor in his moleskin overcoat. A dead rooster was hanging from one of his massive, gloved hands. "All right, Harry," he said, pulling up the balaclava so he could speak. "Why aren't you in class?" "Cancelled," said Harry, getting up. "What are you doing in here?" Hagrid held up the limp rooster. "Second one killed this term," he explained. "It's either foxes or a blood-sucking bugbear, and I need the headmaster's permission to put a charm around the hen coop." That's not quite Hagrid. "Harry Potter, that's it. Yeah, there we go." He peered more closely at Harry from under his thick, snow-flecked eyebrows. "You sure you're all right? You look all hot and bothered." Harry couldn't bring himself to repeat what Ernie and the rest of the Hufflepuffs had been saying about him. "It's nothing," he said. I'd better get going, Hagrid. It's Transfiguration next, and I've got to go pick up my books." He walked off, his mind still full of what Ernie had said about him. "Justin's been waiting for something like this to happen ever since he let slip to Potter he was Muggle-born." Harry stamped up the stairs and turned along another corridor, which was particularly dark. The torches had been extinguished by a strong, icy draught, which was blowing through a loose window pane. He was halfway down the passage when he tripped headlong over something lying on the floor. He turned to squint at what he'd fallen over. He's snoring. Little Dexy's snoring. He turned to squint at what he'd fallen over and felt as though his stomach had dissolved. I want to hear Hagrid actually curse sometime. Maybe. It was nearly Headless Nick, no longer pearly white and transparent, but black and smoky, floating immobile and horizontal, 6 inches off the floor. His head was half off, and his face wore an expression of shock identical to Justin's. Harry got to his feet, his breathing fast and shallow, his heart doing a kind of drum roll against his ribs. He looked wildly up and down the deserted corridor and saw a line of spiders scuttling as fast as they could away from the bodies. The only sounds were the muffled voices of teachers from the class on either side. He could run, and no one would ever know he had been there. But he couldn't just leave them lying here. He had to get help. Would anyone believe he hadn't had anything to do with this? As he stood there, panicking, a door right next to him opened with a bang. Peeves the poltergeist came shooting out. "Why, it's Potter wee Potter!" cackled Peeves, knocking Harry's glasses askew as he bounced past him. "What's Potter up to? Why's Potter lurking?" Peeves stopped halfway through a mid-air somersault. Upside down, he spotted Justin and nearly Headless Nick. He flipped the right way up, filled his lungs, and before Harry could stop him, screamed, "Attack! Attack! Another attack! No mortal or ghost is safe! Run for your lives! Attack!" Okay, there's a couple of voices I need to work on. Peeves is one of those, because I found what's his face, that little Filch. And then I kind of used Peeves' voice for Filch for a little while, so he's a voice I gotta find again. "Got your conch? Oh yeah, he was kind of like this." Yeah, right. Thank you. Crash, crash, crash! Door after door flew open along the corridor, and people flooded out. For several long minutes, there was a scene of such confusion that Justin was in danger of being squashed, and people kept standing in nearly Headless Nick. Harry found himself pinned against the wall as the teachers shouted for quiet. Professor McGonagall came running, followed by her own class, one of whom still had black and white striped hair. She used her wand to set off a loud bang, which restored silence, and ordered everyone back into their classes. No sooner had the scene cleared somewhat than Ernie the Hufflepuff arrived, panting on the scene. "Caught in the act!" Ernie yelled, his face stark white, pointing his finger dramatically at Harry. "That will do, Macmillan," said Professor McGonagall sharply. Peeves was bobbing overhead, now grinning wickedly. surveying the scene. Peeves had always loved chaos. As the teachers bent over Justin and nearly headless Nick, examining them, Peeves broke into a song. "Oh, Potter, you rotter, oh, what have you done? You're killing our students, you think it's good fun. That's enough, Peeves," barked Professor McGonagall. And Peeves zoomed away backwards with his tongue out at Harry. What a little... I'm not going to say it. Justin was carried off up to the hospital wing by Professor Flitwick and Professor Sinastra of the astronomy department, but nobody seemed to know what to do for nearly headless Nick. In the end, Professor McGonagall conjured up a large fan out of thin air, which she gave to Ernie with instructions to waft nearly headless Nick up the stairs. This Ernie did, fanning Nick along with like a silent black hovercraft. This left Harry and Professor McGonagall alone to gaze. "This way, Potter," she said. "Professor," said Harry at once. "I swear I didn't. This is out of my hands, Potter," said Professor McGonagall curtly. They marched in silence around a corner, and she stopped before a large and extremely ugly stone gargoyle. "Sherbet lemon," she said. This was evidently a password, because the gargoyle sprang suddenly to life. It seems like anything. Yeah, the walls, the trees, cars, gargoyles, everything in this environment is alive. Dirt babies. There's like anything. Chairs. There's probably going to be in book 4 or 5 that she's giving like, "How are you doing?" And there's like some chairs like, "Oh, people keep sitting on my face." It's like just everywhere. Because the gargoyle sprang suddenly to life and hopped aside as the wall behind him split in two. Even full of dread for what was coming, Harry couldn't fail to be amazed, as was I, Harry. Behind the wall was a spiral staircase, which was moving smoothly upwards, like an escalator. As he and Professor McGonagall stepped onto it, Harry heard the wall thud closed behind them. They rose upwards in circles, higher and higher, until at last, slightly dizzy, Harry could see a gleaming oak door ahead, with a brass knocker in the shape of a griffin. He knew where he was being taken. This must be where Dumbledore lived. Nice. Okay, sweet. New location. End of that chapter. Okay, question for you. Who was your favorite teacher and why? We won't know who your teacher was, but tell us why you like this teacher so much. Chapter 12, the Polyjuice Potion. Ooh, they're getting it together. They're going to finish the potion, and then we're going to see what happens. And I'm guessing, because they said something about having to pretend to be, what's his name, Foghorn. Lanceworth Foghorn. I keep on forgetting his name. That teacher. So I'm guessing they're going to put Harry to pretend to be that teacher, which will be pretty funny because Harry dislikes him so much. Or it's going to be Hermione. That's my guess. They stepped up the stone staircase at the top, and Professor McGonagall rapped on the door. It opened silently, and they entered. Professor McGonagall told Harry to wait and left him there alone. Harry looked around. One thing was certain. Of all the teachers' offices Harry had visited so far this year, Dumbledore's was by far the most interesting. If he hadn't been scared out of his wits that he was about to be thrown out of the school, he would have been very pleased to have a chance to look around it. Oh, 1 second. Here's a thought I had while reading this. This is kind of a whodunit, this book. It's a different sort of book. This is a whodunit. All these different, like they keep finding bodies or they keep finding things. And there's multiple characters in this big house, big villa. It's a whodunit. That's what she's modeled this after. It was a large and beautiful circular room, full of funny little noises. A number of curious silver instruments stood on spindle-legged tables, whirring and emitting little puffs of smoke. The walls were covered with portraits of old headmasters and mistresses, all of whom were snoozing gently in their frames. There was also an enormous claw-footed desk, which was probably alive, and sitting on a shelf behind it, a shabby, tattered wizard's hat, the Sorting Hat. Harry hesitated. He cast a wary eye along the sleeping wizards and witches and wizards on the walls. Surely it couldn't hurt if he took the hat down and tried it on again, just to see, just to make sure it had put him in the right house. He walked quietly around the desk, lifted the hat from its shelf, and lowered it slowly onto his head. It was much too large and slipped down over his eyes, just as it had done the last time he'd put it on. Harry stared at the black inside of the hat, waiting. Then a small voice said in his ear,
Be in your bonnet, Harry Potter.
Yes, Harry muttered. Sorry to bother you. I wanted to ask. By the way, somebody gave the adjective of constipated for the hat, so that's what I'm doing.
You've been wondering whether I put you in the right house,
said the hat smartly.
Yes, you were particularly difficult to place, but I stand by what I said before.
Harry's heart leapt.
You would have done well in Slytherin.
Nice little reversal there. Harry's stomach plummeted. He grabbed the point of the hat and pulled it off. It hung limply in his hand, grubby and faded. Harry pushed it back onto its shelf, feeling sick. You're wrong, he said aloud to the still and silent hat. It didn't move. Harry backed away, watching it. Then a strange, gagging noise behind him made him wheel around. He wasn't alone after all. Standing on a golden perch behind the door was a decrepit-looking bird, which resembled a half-plucked turkey. In case this bird talks, give me some adjectives, it's probably going to be some kind of main character. Harry stared at it, and the bird looked balefully back, making its gagging noise again. This bird's really got something stuck in its throat. Harry thought it looked very ill. Its eyes were dull, and even as Harry watched, a couple more feathers fell out of its tail. Oh. Harry was just thinking that all he needed was for Dumbledore's pet bird to die while he was alone in the office with it when the bird burst into flames. This bird's like, one moment. Oh! What? This place is so confusing, confounding, and surprising, and fun. That's very fun. Oh man, this bird has all sorts of sicknesses. Dumbledore's trying to fix him over years. Is like, I'm a hopeless. Okay. Oh man. Way too many bodily fluids expelled in this episode. Very true. Yeah, give me one moment. Happens every 10 minutes. Oh, this hurts so much. Okay, sorry, 1 second. I gotta... okay, I was wondering about this, if I can put on filters, and apparently I can. Maybe next time I'll try to find a Harry Potter filter. Or I can keep these glasses. These glasses work well. Okay, sorry for that interlude. Let's get back to it. Harry yelled in shock and backed away into the desk. He looked feverishly around in case there was a glass of water somewhere, but he couldn't see one. The bird, meanwhile, had become a fireball. It gave one loud shriek, and next second there was nothing but a smoldering pile of ash on the floor. The bird just straight up died in front of him. The office door opened. Dumbledore came in, looking very somber. "Professor!" Harry gasped. "Your bird! I couldn't do anything. He just caught fire." He's probably going to cry. I would. To Harry's astonishment, Dumbledore smiled.
"About time, too," he said. "He's been looking dreadful for days. I've been telling him to get a move on."
He chuckled. How does he chuckle? Yeah, like that. He chuckles very softly. It's like my grandpa. My grandpa, when he sneezed, this is how he sneezed. He never sneezed louder than that. Very weird sneeze.
"Fox is a phoenix, Harry. Phoenixes burst into flame when it is time for them to die and are reborn from the ashes. Watch him."
Harry looked down in time to see a tiny, wrinkled, newborn bird poke its head out of the ashes. It was quite as ugly as the old one.
It's a shame you had to see him on a burning day,
said Dumbledore, seating himself behind his desk.
He's really very handsome most of the time. Wonderful red and gold plumage. Fascinating creatures, phoenixes. They can carry immensely heavy loads. Their tears have healing powers, and they make highly faithful pets.
In the shock of Fawkes catching fire, Harry had forgotten what he was there for, but it all came back to him as Dumbledore settled himself in the high-backed chair behind the desk and fixed Harry with his penetrating, light blue stare. Before Dumbledore could speak another word, however, the door of the office flew open with an almighty bang, and Hagrid burst in, a wild look in his eyes, his balaclava perched on top of his shaggy black head, and the dead rooster still swinging from his hand.
"It wasn't Harry, Professor Dumbledore," said Hagrid urgently. "I was talking to him seconds before that kid was found. He never had time, sir."
Dumbledore tried to say something, but Hagrid went ranting on, waving the rooster around in his agitation, sending feathers everywhere.
"I can't obey him. I'll swear it in front of the Ministry of Magic if I have to. Hagrid, You've got the wrong boy, sir. I know Harry never... Hagrid, said Dumbledore loudly. I do not think that Harry attacked those people.
Oh, said Hagrid, the rooster falling limply at his side.
Right. I'll wait outside then, Headmaster.
And he stomped out looking embarrassed. You don't think it was me, Professor? Harry repeated hopefully, as Dumbledore brushed rooster feathers off his desk.
No, Harry, I don't,
said Dumbledore, though his face was somber again.
But I still want to talk to you.
Harry waited nervously while Dumbledore considered him, the tips of his long fingers together.
I must ask you, Harry, whether there is anything you'd like to tell me,
he said gently.
Anything at all.
Harry didn't know what to say. He thought of Malfoy shouting, "You'll be next, mudbloods!" and of the polyjuice potion simmering away in moaning Myrtle's bathroom, then thought of the disembodied voice he'd heard twice, and remembered what Ron had said. Hearing voices no one else can hear isn't a good sign, even in the wizarding world. He thought, too, about what everyone was saying about him, and his growing dread that he was somehow connected with Salazar Slytherin. No, said Harry. There isn't anything, Professor. He should have said something. Harry. Man. He should be trusting Dumbledore from the last book. Man. Okay. Another question. What's the most courageous thing you've ever done? I think that's a good question. What's the most courageous thing you've ever done? The double attack on Justin and nearly headless Nick turned what had hitherto been nervousness into real panic. Curiously, it was nearly headless's Nick's fate that seemed to worry people most. What could possibly do that to a ghost? People asked each other. What terrible power could harm someone who was already dead? There was almost a stampede to book seats on the Hogwarts Express so that students could go home for Christmas. At this rate, we'll be the only ones left, Ron told Harry and Hermione. Us, Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle. What a jolly holiday it's going to be. Crabbe and Goyle, who always did whatever Malfoy did. I just really like annoying people. Had signed up to stay over the holidays too. But Harry was glad that most people were leaving. He was tired of people skirting around him in the corridors, as though he was about to sprout fangs or spit poison. Tired of all the muttering, pointing, and hissing as he passed. Who's that? I've never known anybody hiss. You know, never known anybody to hiss. Fred and George, however, found all this very funny. They went out of their way to march ahead of Harry down the corridor, shouting, "Make way for the heir of Slytherin! Seriously, evil wizard coming through!" Percy was deeply disapproving of this behavior. "It's not a laughing matter," he said coldly. "Oh, get out of the way, Percy," said Fred. "Harry's in a hurry." "Yeah, he's nipping off to this chamber of secrets for a cup of tea with his fanged servant," said George, chortling. Jenny didn't find it amusing either. Okay, I'm going to try Jenny here. "Oh, don't." She's wailing here, okay? Give me some room. She wailed. That's just one line. She wailed every time Fred asked Harry loudly who he was planning to attack next, or George pretended to ward Harry off with a large clove of garlic when they met. Harry didn't mind. It made him feel better that Fred and George, at least, thought the idea of his being Slytherin's heir was quite ludicrous. But their antics seemed to be aggravating Draco Malfoy, who looked increasingly sour each time he saw them at it. "It's because he's bursting to say it's really him," said Ron knowingly. "You know how he hates anyone beating him at anything, and you're getting all the credit for his dirty work." Not for long," said Hermione in a satisfied tone. "The Polyjuice Potion's nearly ready. We'll be getting the truth out of him any day now." At last the term ended, and a silence deep as the snow on the grounds descended on the castle. Harry found it peaceful, rather than gloomy, and enjoyed the fact that he, Hermione, and the Weasleys had the run of Gryffindor Tower, which meant they could play Exploding Snap loudly without bothering anyone, and practice dueling in private. Exploding Snap? I want to know what that game is. Exploding Snap. Fred, George, and Ginny had chosen to stay at school rather than visit Bill in Egypt with Mr. and Mrs. Weasley. Percy, who disapproved of what he termed their childish behavior, didn't spend much time in the Gryffindor common room. He had already told them pompously that he was only staying over Christmas because it was his duty as a prefect to support the teachers during this troubled time. Christmas morning dawned. Cold and white, Harry and Ron, the only ones left in their dormitory, were woken very early by Hermione, who burst in, dressed and carrying presents for them both. Okay, one second. There is a Harry Potter Christmas playlist, which I'm gonna put on here. Let me. Ah, there it is. Relaxing Harry Potter Christmas. There we go. "Wake up," she said loudly, pulling back the curtains at the windows. "Hermione, you're not supposed to be in here," said Ron, shielding his eyes against the light. "Merry Christmas to you too," said Hermione, throwing him his present. "I've been up for nearly an hour, adding more lace wings to the potion. It's ready." Harry sat up, suddenly wide awake. "Are you sure?" "Positive," said Hermione, shifting Scabbers the rat so that she could sit down on the end of his four-poster. "If we're going to do it, I say it should be tonight." At that moment, Hedwig swooped into the room, carrying a very small package in her beak. "Hello," said Harry happily as she landed on his bed. "Are you speaking to me again?" She nibbled his ear in an affectionate sort of way. That's the best. It's like the grossest owl. I'm ruining Hedwig so much for people. Okay. She nibbled his ear in an affectionate sort of way, which was a far better present than the one which she had brought him, which turned out to be from the Dursleys. Oh, they had sent Harry a toothpick and a note telling him to find out whether he'd be able to stay at Hogwarts for the summer holidays too. Toothpick! So stupid. The rest of Harry's Christmas presents were far more satisfactory. Hagrid had sent him a large tin of treacle fudge, which Harry decided to soften by the fire before eating. Ron had given him a book called Flying with the Cannons, a book of interesting facts about his favorite Quidditch team, and Hermione had brought him a luxury eagle-feathered quill. Harry opened the last present to find a new, hand-knitted jumper from Mrs. Weasley, and a large plum cake. He put up her card with a fresh surge of guilt, thinking about Mr. Weasley's car, which hadn't been seen since its crash with a Whomping Willow, and the bout of rule-breaking he and Ron were planning next. They're kind of like, they're going to become his adoptive parents, for sure. That's awesome. No one, not even someone dreading taking Polyjuice Potion later, could fail to enjoy Christmas dinner at Hogwarts. The Great Hall looked magnificent, Not only were there a dozen frost-covered Christmas trees and thick streamers of holly and mistletoes crisscrossing the ceiling, but enchanted snow was falling, warm and dry, from the ceiling. Dumbledore led them in a few of his favorite carols, Hagrid booming more and more loudly with every goblet of eggnog he consumed. Percy, who hadn't noticed that Fred had bewitched his prefect badge so that it now read Pinhead, kept asking them all what they were sniggering at. Harry didn't even care that Draco Malfoy was making loud, snide remarks about his new jumper from the Slytherin table. With a bit of luck, Malfoy would be getting his comeuppance in a few hours' time. Harry and Ron had barely finished their third helpings of Christmas pudding when Hermione ushered them out of the hall to finalize their plans for the evening. "We still need a bit of the people you're changing into," said Hermione matter-of-factly, as though she was sending them to the supermarket for washing powder. "And obviously, it'll be best if you can get something of Crabbe and Goyle's. They're Malfoy's best friends. He'll tell them anything. And we also need to make sure that the real Crabbe and Goyle can't burst in on us while we're interrogating him. I've got it all worked out," she went on smoothly, ignoring Harry and Ron's stupefied faces. She held up 2 plum chocolate cakes. "I filled these with a simple sleeping draught. All you have to do is make sure Crabbe and Goyle find them. You know how greedy they are. They're bound to eat them. Once they're asleep, pull out a few of their hairs and hide them in a broom cupboard." Harry and Ron looked incredulously at each other. "Hermione, I don't think that could be seriously wrong." But Hermione had a steely glint in her eye, not unlike the one Professor McGonagall sometimes had. "The potion will be useless without Crabbe and Goyle's hair," she said sternly. "You do want to investigate Malfoy, don't you?" "Oh, all right, said Harry. "But what about you? Whose hair are you ripping out?" "I've already got mine," said Hermione brightly, pulling a tiny bottle out of her pockets and showing them the single hair inside it. "Remember Millicent Bulstrode wrestling with me at the dueling club? She left this on my robes when she was trying to strangle me." Just so happy about it. "And she's gone home for Christmas, so I'll just have to tell the Slytherins I've decided to come back." When Hermione had bustled off to check on the Polyjuice potion again, Ron turned to Harry with a doom-laden expression. "Have you ever heard of a plan where so many things could go wrong?" "Tell me about it, Ron." "Oh yeah, I know that it's not the correct pronunciation. I'm doing it because I find it funny and it annoys people. That's why I'm doing it." But Harry... Okay, sorry. All right, next section. But to Harry and Ron's utter amazement, stage 1 of the operation went just as smoothly as Hermione had said. They lurked in the deserted entrance hall after Christmas tea, waiting for Crabbe and Goyle, who had remained alone at the Slytherin table, shoveling down 4th helpings of trifle. Harry had perched the chocolate cakes on the end of the banisters. It's like they're just base creatures that just operating on base instincts. It's like, oh. When they spotted Crabbe and Goyle coming out of the Great Hall, Harry and Ron hid quickly behind a suit of armor next to the front door. "How thick can you get?" Ron whispered ecstatically as Crabbe gleefully pointed at the cakes to Goyle and grabbed them. Grinning stupidly, they stuffed the cakes whole into their large mouths. For a moment, both of them chewed greedily, looks of triumph on their faces. Then, without the smallest change of expression, they both keeled over backwards onto the floor. Much the most difficult bit was hiding them in the cupboard across the hall. Once they were safely stowed amongst the buckets and mops, Harry yanked out a couple of the bristles that covered Goyle's forehead, and Ron pulled out several of Crabbe's hairs. They also stole their shoes, because their own were far too small for Crabbe and Goyle-sized feet. Then, still stunned at what they had just done, they sprinted up to the moaning Myrtle's bathroom. They could hardly see for the thick black smoke issuing from the cubicle in which Hermione... Okay, enough Christmassy music. They could hardly see for the thick black smoke issuing from the cubicle in which Hermione was stirring the cauldron. Pulling their robes up over their faces, Harry and Ron knocked softly on the door. Hermione? They heard the scrape of the lock, and Hermione emerged, shiny-faced and looking anxious. Behind her, they heard the gloop-gloop of the bubbling, treacle-thick potion. 3 glass tumblers stood ready on the toilet seat. Lois, what did you put in the cupcakes? Yeah, I'm a bit wah today. Did you get them? Hermione asked breathlessly. Harry showed her Goyle's hair. Good. And I sneaked these spare robes out of the laundry, Hermione said, holding up a small sack. You'll need bigger sizes once you're Crabbe and Goyle. The 3 of them stared into the cauldron. Close up, the potion looked like thick, dark mud, bubbling sluggishly. I'm sure I've done everything right, said Hermione, nervously rereading the splotched page of Most Potente Potions. It looks like the book says it should. Once we've drunk it, we'll have exactly an hour before we change back into ourselves. Now what? Ron whispered. We separate it into 3 glasses and add the hairs. Hermione ladled large dollops of the potion into each of the glasses. Then, her hand trembling, she shook Millicent Bulstrode's hair out of its bottle into the first glass. The potion hissed loudly, like a boiling kettle, and frothed madly. A second later, it had turned into a thick sort of yellow. Ugh, essence of Millicent Bulstrode, said Ron, eyeing it with loathing. Bet it tastes disgusting. Add yours, then, said Hermione. Harry dropped Goyle's hair into the middle glass, and Ron put Crabbe's into the last one. Both glasses hissed and frothed. Goyle's turned into the khaki color of a bogey, Crabbe's a dark, murky brown. Hang on, said Harry, as Ron and Hermione reached for their glasses. We'd better not all drink them in here. Once we turn into Crabbe and Goyle, we won't fit, and Millicent Bulstrode's no pixie. Good thinking, said Ron, unlocking the door. We'll take separate cubicles. Careful not to spill a drop of his polyjuice potion, Harry slipped into the middle cubicle. Ready? He called. Ready, came Ron and Hermione's voices. 1, 2, 3. Pinching his nose, Harry drank the potion down into 2 large gulps. It tasted like overcooked cabbage. Immediately, his insides started writhing as though he just swallowed live snakes. Doubled up, he wondered whether he was going to be sick. Then a burning sensation spread rapidly from his stomach to the very ends of his fingers and toes. Next, bringing him gasping to all 4s, came a horrible melting feeling as the skin all over his body bubbled like hot wax, and before his eyes, his hands began to grow. His fingers thickened, the nails broadened, and the knuckles were bulging like bolts. His shoulders stretched painfully, and a prickling on his forehead told him that hair was creeping down towards his eyebrows. His robes ripped as his chest expanded like a barrel bursting its hoops. His feet were agony in shoes 4 sizes too small. As suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. Harry lay face down on the cold stone floor, listening to Myrtle gurgling morosely in the end toilet. With difficulty, he kicked off his shoes and stood up. So this was what it felt like, being Goyle. His large hand trembled. He pulled off his old robes, which were hanging a foot above his ankles, pulled on the spare ones, and laced up Goyle's boat-like shoes. He reached up to brush his hair out of his eyes and met only the short growth of wiry bristles, low on his forehead. Then he realized that his glasses were clouding his eyes, because Goyle obviously didn't need them. He took them off and called, "Oh, okay, here we go." Here's Goyle's voice. "Are you two okay?" French accent. "Are you two okay?" No, but more deeper. "Are you two okay?" Goyle's low rasp. "Are you two okay?" Goyle's low rasp of a voice issued from his mouth. "Yeah," came the deep grunt of Crabbe from his right. This is gonna be a crap show. Harry unlocked his door and stepped in front of the cracked mirror. Goyle stared back at him out of dull, deep-set eyes. Harry scratched his ears. So did Goyle. Ron's door opened. They stared at each other, except that he looked pale and shocked. Ron was indistinguishable from Crabbe. Pulled the pudding basin haircut to the long gorilla arms. "This is unbelievable," said Ron, approaching the mirror and prodding Crabbe's flat nose. "Unbelievable." Oh my gosh. "We'd better get going," said Harry, loosening the watch that was cutting into Goyle's thick wrist. "We've still got to find out where the Slytherin common room is." Oh, this is so bad. Franche. I only hope we can find someone to follow." Ron, who had been gazing at Harry. I gotta find different ones for Crabbe and Goyle. "You don't know how bizarre it is to see Goyle thinking." He banged on Hermione's door. "Come on, we need to go." A high-pitched voice answered him. Okay, so Millicent is high-pitched. What was she again? She's just like this. She's gruff though, because... Oh. I'm going to see what happens here. I don't think I'm going to come after all. You can go on without me. "Hermione, we know Millicent Bulstrode's ugly. No one's going to know it's you." "No, really, I don't think I'll come. You two hurry up. You're wasting time." "Maybe one of them is German?" Ooh, good one, Robert. Yes. Sayer. One of them's going to be German. Thank you. That's great. Harry looked at Ron bewildered. So Ron will be German. Oh gosh, I'm so mixed up. I'm trying to hear the German accent. And I know I'm German. "That looks more like Goyle," said Ron. "That's how he looks every time a teacher asks him a question." "Hermione, are you okay?" said Harry through the door. "Fine, I'm fine. Go on." Harry looked at his watch. 5 of their precious 60 minutes had already passed. "We'll meet you back here, all right?" he said. Harry and Ron opened the door of the bathroom carefully, checked that the coast was clear, and set off. Don't swing your arms like that," Harry muttered to Ron. "Eh? Crabbe holds them sort of stiff." Oh gosh, this is gonna be so hard. I'm actually can't hear the German accent in my head. Who do I know? Who's that famous director? There is a sort of way of speaking. Strong German accent! There we go. Okay, there we go. I found it. "Eh? Crabbe holds them sort of stiff. How's this?" "Yeah, that's better." They went down the marble staircase. All they needed was a Slytherin who they could follow to the Slytherin common room. But there was nobody around. "Any ideas?" muttered Harry. "The Slytherins always come for breakfast from over there." He's basically Arnold. He's going to turn into Arnold. That's what I'm going to do, said Ron, nodding at the entrance to the dungeons. The words had barely left his mouth when a girl with long curly hair emerged from the entrance. "Excuse me," said Ron, hurrying up to her. "We've forgotten the way to our common room." "I beg your pardon," said the girl stiffly. "Our common room? I'm a Ravenclaw." She walked away, looking suspiciously back at them. Harry and Ron hurried down the stone steps into the darkness, their footsteps echoing particularly loudly as Crabbe and Goyle's huge feet hit the floor, feeling that this wasn't going to be as easy as they hoped. Okay, 1 second. I need to check how long this goes on for. Okay, yeah, this goes on for a couple of pages. So if I'm going to go over 6 this time. I'm going to go longer. So I'm going to log off in case this turns off after 60 minutes. But I'm going to pop back on to finish this chapter, okay? The labyrinth passages were deserted. They walked deeper and deeper under the school, constantly checking their watches to see how much time they had left. After a quarter of an hour, just when they were getting desperate, they heard a sudden movement ahead. "Ha!" said Ron excitedly. "There's one of them now." The figure was emerging from a side room. As they hurried nearer, however, their hearts sank. It wasn't a Slytherin. It was Percy. "What are you doing down here?" said Ron in surprise. Percy looked affronted. "That," he said stiffly, "is none of your business. It's Crabbe, isn't it?" "Oh, yeah," said Ron. "Well, get off to your dormitories," said Percy sternly. "It's not safe to go wandering around dark corridors these days."
You are?
Ron pointed out. "I," said Percy, drawing himself up, "am a prefect. Nothing's about to attack me." A voice suddenly echoed behind Harry and Ron. Draco Malfoy was strolling towards them. Oh, here we go. And for the first time in his life, Harry was pleased to see them. "There you are," he drawled, looking at them. "Have you two been pigging out in the Great Hall all this time? I've been looking for you. I want to show you something really funny." Malfoy glanced witheringly at Percy. "What are you doing down here, Weasley?" he sneered. Percy looked outraged. You want to show a bit more respect to a school prefect," he said. "I don't like your attitude." Malfoy sneered. And motioned Harry and Ron to follow him. Harry almost said something apologetic to Percy, but caught himself just in time. He and Ron hurried off after Malfoy, who said as they turned into the next passage, "That Peter Weasley."
Percy,
Ron corrected him automatically. "Whatever," said Malfoy. "I've noticed him sneaking around a lot lately, and I bet I know what he's up to. He thinks he's going to catch Slytherin their hair single-handed. He gave a short, derisive laugh. Harry and Ron exchanged excited looks. Malfoy paused by a stretch of bare, damp stone wall. What's the new password again?" he said to Harry. Said Harry. "Oh, yeah, pure blood," said Malfoy, not listening, and a stone door concealed in the wall slid open. Malfoy marched through it, and Harry and Ron followed him. The Slytherin common room was a long, low, underground room, with rough stone walls and ceiling, from which round, greenish lamps were hanging on chains. A fire was crackling under an elaborately carved mantelpiece ahead of them, and several Slytherins were silhouetted around it in carved chairs. "Wait here," said Malfoy to Harry and Ron, motioning them to a pair of empty chairs set back from the fire. "I'll go and get it. My father's just sent it to me." Wondering what Malfoy was going to show them, Harry and Ron sat down, doing their best to look at home. "Thank you very much, Hey Dove." Malfoy came back a minute later, holding what looked like a newspaper cutting. He thrust it under Ron's nose. "That'll give you a laugh," he said. Harry saw Ron's eyes widen in shock. He read the cutting quickly, gave a forced laugh, "Ha ha, oh," and handed it to Harry. It had been clipped out of the Daily Prophet, and it said, Inquiry at the Ministry of Magic. Arthur Weasley, head of the misuse of Muggle Artifacts Office, was today fined 50 galleons for bewitching a Muggle car. Mr. Lucius Malfoy, a governor of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, where the enchanted car crashed earlier this year, called today for Mr. Weasley's resignation. Weasley has brought the ministry into his Lucius voice. Weasley has brought the ministry into disrepute, Mr. Malfoy told a reporter. He's clearly unfit to draw up our laws, and his ridiculous Muggle Protection Act should be scrapped immediately. Mr. Weasley was unavailable for comment, although his wife told reporters to clear off, or she'd set the family ghoul on them. "Well," said Malfoy impatiently, as Harry handed the cutting back to him, "don't you think it's funny?" Ha, said Harry bleakly. "Arthur Weasley loves Muggles so much, he should snap his wand in half and go and join them," said Malfoy scornfully. "You'd never know the Weasleys were purebloods, the way they behave." Ron, or rather Crabbe's face, was contorted with fury. "What's up with you, Crabbe?" snapped Malfoy.
Stomachache,
Ron grunted. Oh, shoot, you got 30 seconds remaining. Okay, I'm going to log back in. Okay, come on right back. There's Shaylin, Rebecca. Yeah, come on back. I'm going to wait a hot second here to let everybody join back in again. And for anybody else who's just tuning in, I'm just finishing off my Harry Potter reading, the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes here. There just wasn't enough time. Okay, looks like everybody's back on. Okay, gonna keep on going. We got 3 pages left. Well, go up to the hospital wing and give all those mudbloods a kick from me, said Malfoy, snickering. I'll find his laugh. You know, I'm surprised the Daily Prophet hasn't reported all those attacks yet, he went on. You know, I'm surprised the Daily Prophet hasn't reported all those attacks yet, he went on thoughtfully. I suppose Dumbledore's trying to hush it all up. He'll be sacked if it doesn't stop soon. Father's always said Dumbledore's the worst thing that's ever happened to this place. He loves Muggleborns. A decent headmaster would never have let a slime like that creep in. Malfoy started taking pictures with an imaginary camera and did a cruel but accurate impression of Colin.
Potter, can I have your picture, Potter? Can I have your autograph? Can I lick your shoes, please, Potter?
He dropped his hands and looked at Harry and Ron. What's the matter with you two? Far too late, Harry and Ron forced themselves to laugh. But Malfoy seemed satisfied. Perhaps Crabbe and Goyle were always slow on the uptake. St. Potter, the Mudblood's friend, said Malfoy slowly. He's another one with no proper wizard feeling, or he wouldn't go around with that jumped-up Granger Mudblood. And people think he's Slytherin's heir. Harry and Ron waited with bated breath. Malfoy was surely seconds away from telling them it was him. But then, I wish I knew who it was, said Malfoy petulantly. I could help them. Ron's jaw dropped, so that Crabbe's face looked even more gormless than usual. Gormless? I'm gonna find out what that word means. Fortunately, Malfoy didn't notice, and Harry, thinking fast, said, You must have some idea who's behind it all. You know I haven't. Goyle, how many times do I have to tell you, snapped Malfoy. And Father won't tell me anything about the last time the chamber was opened either. Of course, it was about 50 years ago, so it was before his time, but he knows all about it. And he says that it was all kept quiet, and it'd look suspicious if I knew too much about it. But I know one thing. Last time the Chamber of Secrets was opened, a Mudblood died. So I bet it's a matter of time before one of them's killed this time. I hope it's Granger, he said with relish. Ron was clenching Crabbe's gigantic fist, feeling that it would be a bit of a giveaway if Ron punched Malfoy. Harry shot him a warning look and said, Do you know if the person who opened the chamber last night was caught? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Valley boy. Oh, yeah. Whoever it was expelled, said Malfoy. They're probably still in Azkaban. Azkaban? Said Harry, puzzled. Azkaban. The wizard prison, Goyle, said Malfoy, looking at him in disbelief. Honestly, if you were any slower, you'd be going backwards. He shifted restlessly in his chair and said, Father says to keep my head down and let the heir of Slytherin get on with it. He says the school needs ridding of all the mudblood filth, but not to get mixed up in it. Of course, he's got a lot of it on his plate at the moment. You know the Ministry of Magic raided our manor last week? Harry tried to force Goyle's dull face into a look of concern. Yeah, said Malfoy. Luckily, they didn't find much. Father's got some very valuable dark art stuff. But luckily, we've got our own secret chamber under the drawing room floor. Oh! Ho! I don't know what that is, said Ron. Malfoy looked at him. So did Harry. Ron blushed. Even his hair was turning red. Whoa! His nose was also slowly lengthening. Their hour was up. Ron was turning back into himself, and from the look of horror he was suddenly giving Harry, he must be too. They both jumped to their feet. Medicine for my stomach, Ron grunted. And without further ado, they sprinted the length of the Slytherin common room, hurled themselves at the stone wall, and dashed up the passage. Hoping against hope that Malfoy hadn't noticed anything, Harry could feel his feet slipping around in Goyle's huge shoes, and had to hoist up his robes as he shrank. They crashed up the steps into the dark entrance hall, which was full of a muffled pounding coming from the cupboard where they'd locked Crabbe and Goyle. Leaving their shoes outside the cupboard door, they sprinted in their socks up the marble staircase towards Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. I'm going to try a mixture of Ron and Arnold. Well, it wasn't a complete waste of time. Ron panted, closing the bathroom door behind him. Well, I don't know if he's...
I know we still got to find out who's doing the attacks, but I'm going to write Dad tomorrow and tell him to check under the Malfoy's drawing room.
Harry checked his face in the cracked mirror. He was back to normal. Okay, they're back to normal now. He put his glasses on as Ron hammered on the door of Hermione's cubicle. Hermione, come out! We've got loads to tell you.
Go away!
Hermione squeaked. Harry and Ron looked at each other. What's the matter? Said Ron. You must be back to normal by now. We are. But Moaning Myrtle glided suddenly through the cubicle door. Harry had never seen her looking so happy.
Ooh, wait till you see, she said. It's awful.
They heard the lock slide back and Hermione emerged, sobbing, her robes pulled over her head. What's up? Said Ron uncertainly. Have you still got Millicent's nose or something? Hermione let her robes fall, and Ron backed into the sink. Her face was covered in black fur. Her eyes had gone yellow, and there were long, pointed ears poking through her hair.
It was a cat, she howled. Millicent Bulstrode must have a cat, and the potion isn't supposed to be used for animal transformations.
Uh-oh, said Ron.
You'll be teased something dreadful, said
Myrtle happily. It's okay, Hermione, said Harry quickly. We'll take you up to the hospital wing. Madame Pomfrey never asked too many questions. It took a long time to persuade Hermione to leave the bathroom. Moaning Myrtle sped them on their way with a hearty guffaw.
Wait till everybody finds out you've got a tail.
And that's that. That was a fun chapter. And hope you had fun me ruining those characters for you. Okay, a short interaction Q&A time. Any thoughts you have on what has transpired in this hour? This bizarre time where I try to figure out how to do those voices. Moaning Myrtle accent was on point. Really? Okay, that's yeah, that was so much fun. That accent, she's like that. Okay, yeah. Somebody said pouty, and that really helped. Hilarious voice, I loved it. Thanks, ND Wizard. What do you think is up with Percy? Well, I think Percy is trying to, and I hope. By the way, when you ask these questions, don't try to lead me on to something. But I think he is saying, I'm just staying because it's the prefect's job, but I think he's actually cares, you know? And I think he's trying to take care of them. Dex is up. Yeah, boy. Know any good Harry Potter jokes? I told one already. That's actually Tash's, and I won't tell it again. I don't need any other ones. Let's see your sweater. There we go.
What's your favorite kind of ramen, John?
Favorite ramen? Oh, shoyu. I like shoyu. I was in Japan in November, and I went to the ramen museum. And there's a food court with the best ramen in the world. And you can, they have also mini ramen bowls, so you can try a lot. I had 5 bowls of ramen. Still small ones, but honestly, it blew my mind how good they were. Do I like Draco? In a love-hate sort of way, yeah. Like, I don't actually like him. Fun chapter, thank you. Who do you think is the heir of Slytherin? Oh, gosh, I don't know. That's hard for me to guess. Sorry. That's adorable. John, I have a joke. Tell it. So, do you think the heir of Slytherin's Percy Weasley? I hope you're not... Oh, shut up, Nathan. Nathan's trying to throw me off here. Oops, I accidentally waved at Saya. Get... this app. Okay, yeah, say your joke. Say your joke if you want to. Knock, knock. Who's there? Okay, this is going to take a while for the typing and everything. Okay, while that's happening, just type out your joke. I'll read it. While that's happening, please applaud your nurses. That should be happening now. Reach out to them, see if they need any help, and also any elderly people around you. Right now, actually, my friend Byron is reading Game of Thrones out loud. His account is Noble Byron. Follow Mark at yoc.creations. Follow my company, Cave Cannon Productions, if you haven't already. Cave Cannon Productions. Yeah, that was a really funny chapter. A fun chapter. Okay, let's see what this joke was. Knock, knock. Who's there? You know.
You know who?
He who shall not be named? Knock, knock, you know who? You know. All right, everybody. I'm going to peace out. Have a fun afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you are. And I'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Bye-bye.